today's Tuesday teaching tip. Today's tip is part 2 in a series of lessons that I'm sharing with you about reading comprehension. I found some questions that parents were having on Facebook, and then some phone calls I get here and emails I get here, and parents looking for help with reading comprehension. These lessons that I'm sharing with you can be used K through 12 to just help improve overall reading comprehension. So last week we talked about using prior knowledge and doing a preview of a book, which some call a book walk. So you go through the book, you look at the book's cover, the book's title, and start thinking about what the book can be about. And you go through the book looking at the pictures and making up a story by using just the pictures. And that's what you do during a book walk. The second thing I'm going to share with you today is predicting. So predicting is another thing that you can do to improve reading comprehension. So with predicting, we did this last week. We used the title and the pictures to make a good guess about what the book will be about. And so using predicting, so we said, okay, let's think about what we thought the book was going to be about and talk about it. So, okay, now let's read to find out if we're correct. When you do this, you set a purpose for reading. And the purpose is not just sounding out words or word calling, because far too often kids have that misconception that reading is just word calling. When you set a purpose for reading, saying, well, we're going to read today to find out if we were right, if our picture walk, if our preview was correct, if what we thought the book was going to be about really is what we said. And so last week I did a book walk with this. And so come to find out, this book's a little bit different. It took kind of a left turn. So there were parts of the book where I was correct, and then parts of the book where I was a little bit off. And so when we looked at the book and we previewed it, there's a picture of Jenny walking and throwing down some things. And I said, well, she's throwing down some stuff from a paper bag. It's probably not trash because it doesn't look like she's littering. And so we guessed that it would either be bird seed or breadcrumbs. And sure enough, it was crumbs. So in one part she does say breadcrumbs, and another part it says crumbs. So because I did a kind of a broad thing, either bird seed or breadcrumbs, then my prediction was right. And as you're doing this and you're reading, you'll see your children go, yes, I was right, because they get really excited when they're right about something. And so that's one of those things. Another thing when you preview and you're talking about throwing down breadcrumbs or you're throwing down birdseed, when they come to the word crumbs, if you just use your sounding out skills, crumbs doesn't really, it would be like crumbs. Because of that B, it's silent. And so like throwing down bread, ooh, what is that word? Oh, we predicted it was going to be breadcrumbs, so that's probably crumbs. And it really helps them with their reading as well when you do that. So we were right about that part. We were also right about her getting a hat and not being very happy about the hat she got, because apparently she did want some very fancy hat. And so the part that I was way off on, and it's really interesting, and again, when you're wrong, it still sets up that interest to find out, why was I wrong? Where did my story when I used these pictures, where did my story go wrong? Well, my story went wrong in that she didn't add things to her hat. There were some birds that came and added things to her hat and fancied her hat up for her. So whereas the beginning, I thought, oh, this is a realistic fiction story where, she had a hat, didn't like how plain it was and fancied it up a bit. Well, come to find out, these birds gathered all these different things to create a beautiful hat for her. And so then that would spark an interesting debate of whether or not this is still considered realistic fiction, because birds could come and drop things on your hat, although I don't know if they would be able to design a beautiful floral hat like these birds did here, or if it would be considered fantasy because birds don't really design hats. But that's a really interesting debate, comprehension, to improve comprehension with your students. And so this book kind of gave me some gifts that I wasn't expecting, in that it was a little bit interesting turn of events there that I wasn't expecting with the book walk that I saw. So, part one, like I said, using prior knowledge and doing the book walk. So use what you know about these pictures to try and guess what the book's going to be about. And that guess is called a prediction. So when you make a prediction, when you read a book with your children, you're setting them up for comprehension. You're setting them up for thinking about what they're reading, which is the comprehension part. And so next week, we will talk about, once you're finished reading, how do you identify the main idea and summarization. I've covered this before in a reader's workshop lesson, so I'm not going to dive very deeply into that lesson next week. And then we'll go into questioning, making inferences, and visualization. Again, some of those things I've used before in a reader's workshop lesson series. And so I won't dive too deeply into some of those that I've already covered before in previous lessons. All right, until next week, happy reading, have fun with homeschooling, don't get too stressed out. Summer is the time to kind of regather your thoughts and regather your supplies and think about the year to come. And hopefully you can implement some of these Tuesday teaching tips in your homeschool day.